15 years ago, if somebody had have said to me, what you eat makes a difference with your pain, I would have said, what rubbish. But we've kind of moved on a little bit, because now in the last, I think in the 90s, there was a discovery that there was this low level of inflammation, not high levels like when you've got an infection, but just low levels of inflammation. And they were linked with chronic disease. Now we're starting to talk about that low-level inflammation as being something that's associated with chronic pain, which makes sense because chronic pain accompanies a lot of chronic disease. So if there is, and we know that there is, this low level of inflammation, and it's systemic, in other words, it's all through us, it's everywhere. You know, it permeates all body systems. Then it makes sense that we would think about how do we turn off the inflammation. So anti-inflammatory. So when you go into this sort of area, you start thinking, okay, how do I eat in an anti-inflammatory way? And we know that there are some food groups that do this. So in particular, there's a group of foods called omega-3 fatty acid foods. And these are, for example, your oily fish, so your beautiful piece of red salmon, your tin of salmon, if you can't tolerate salmon that you cook on the stove, flax seeds, oregano. I mean, amazing things that are actually really high in omega-3. Now, if you can't tolerate any of those, you can actually take supplements of omega-3. And what we find, in my experience working with people in pain, when somebody really takes this quite seriously and they decide they're going to give this a go, they find that it actually works. It's remarkable. So by and large, I would encourage everybody in chronic pain to think about how can they modify their diet so that they've got more omega-3 foods than, say, omega-6 foods. Omega-3 is really good for people in pain. I mean, having said that, you can talk about diet, and that's good, but there are other things that are anti-inflammatory as well. For example, if you take a human baby away from its mother, deprive it of its mother, the chemicals in the bloodstream of that baby will reflect an inflammatory increase. So in other words, when we separate from each other, we have an inflammatory process. So connection, love, social, fellowship is really good for inflammation. We can actually decrease our inflammatory processes just by being connected socially. We are social animals. You know, there is some of the thinking around at the moment is that we have evolved in particular ways as human beings. So we've evolved since the year dot as group animals. We herd. We are a group. We also have eaten game rather than beef that is bred on grain, rather than, cows eat pasture. They don't usually get fed in the natural state. They don't get fed grain. But what we do as humans is we're making all of our food so convenient and so luscious and yummy and tender, and that we're actually creating an inflammatory diet because we're not adapted to those things. If we're not adapted to something, think about it. If we're not adapted to something, our immune system says, uh-oh, this could be bad. I better be on red alert here. So you get this immune system vigilance because we're taking in all of this, foods and other stuff which is actually not, we're not adapted for. Similarly, if we're isolated, we're not adapted for that either. We need each other. We need connection. So in fact, current thinking is that we have a lifestyle that we're not adapted for. So sitting back and having pizza delivered to the door and drinking our Coca-Cola and smoking and having lots of all these very fast foods is probably not good for our immune system. Whereas if we're eating, you know, nothing wrong with eating meat, we've always been meat eaters, but if we were choosing game, pasture-fed beef, all of these things are really good. So it's good to think anti-inflammatory. We can do it.